Hi everybody, it's me. It's Dr. Kestler from Lorain County Community College, and welcome to today's co-video. And I can see I need a haircut from looking at the screen that I'm on here. I also want to point out that today is the 21st. My temperature is 97 degrees, and I'm not afraid to share that. I hear some people are worried about sharing their temperature with other people for I don't know why. And that is 36.1 degrees centigrade. I want to talk about a couple of things today that have to do with infectivity. There was a very interesting story today about the lockdown. And there's a couple of things. One of the things that says that if we had started the lockdown earlier, we would have had more success like they did in places like Korea, South Korea. And they certainly did, starting it a little bit earlier. But I also want to point out that the lockdown was very successful. It was actually a very successful thing that saved lots and lots of lives, especially in places like here in Ohio, where I am at right now. And this is based on a paper that came out. That hasn't come out yet, by the way. It will be coming out from Columbia University, and the paper is based on some modeling that they did at the public health school. And one of the things that they did was to calculate. Well, first of all, let's look at the data, and this is the actual data of what actually happened. And you can see there's both the national cases and the New York cases, and there's deaths. And there is in actual cases, and you can see that after we impose the lockdown, things start going really rapidly and getting better after the lockdown begins. And they came up with something interesting, and that is after the lockdown, they came up with a concept of an estimated reproduction rate, and that's shown here on the next image here. And you can see there's New York, Los Angeles, New Orleans, Chicago, and Boston, all pretty much show the same effect. As soon as you put the lockdown in at a national level, you see an almost immediate, within a week or two, drop in the estimated reproduction rate, that R0 number. And it begins to look like you're really getting it down towards 1. And when you get it down towards 1, it's really not moving around in the country at all. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about something else, though, and this gives you more evidence for why we do things like put masks on or masks off. And that is, there is a concept that some people spread the virus more than others. And they may be symptomatic, they may not be symptomatic. That is an important consideration here. And before I go any further, I just want to say something, and that is there is not something that we're going to go looking for these people and say, aha, you're a super spreader. That is not the point at all. The fact of the matter is that there are some, and you know it after the damage has been done. So we all have to take precautions to protect each other, because you may have the disease asymptomatically and you may become a super spreader. And let me tell you about a couple of examples. Of course, you have Typhoid Mary was a short order cook in New York City, an Irish immigrant, and she actually had a very harsh life after she was supposedly the person that was spreading typhoid fever to lots and lots of people. Fact of the matter is, there probably were many people like that. Just like we in the movie The Band Played On, they outline a particular individual by the name of Gaishan Dugas, and he was supposedly what we call patient zero in HIV. It turned out that was also not quite accurate. Was there people spreading the virus around more than others? Oh yes, of course there was. But whether he was individually responsible, it makes a nice story, it makes a nice novel, it makes a nice made-for-TV movie. But it really isn't. There isn't one person you can blame for either of these two situations. So the fact of the matter is there are probably super spreaders, we think, in the case of COVID-19. And this comes out in the Morbidity Mortality Weekly Report. There was a story about a choir practice. Now, there's something about choir that is. I got into a great discussion with my church about choir and how choir is a little bit different, because choir, we all known people who are, shall we say, quiet talkers. And then there are the people who are loud talkers, and loud talkers are forcing more air. And if you're forcing more air, physics tells you that you're going to have more spread. You're going to be spreading more droplets. And so choir is an interesting thing because your job is to sing. At any rate, they found a patient in this group through contact tracing. They were able to figure out that there was this one person who was spreading the virus pretty fast, was spreading the virus to a whole group of people at a particular choir practice. And I think the data for that is shown on this little bar graph here. There were a couple of choir practices in this story, in this study, and it was the second choir practice that appeared to be the one that was responsible for everyone to get in contact with the disease, and then a whole cluster of people. This is not a unusual concept, nor should you be surprised at it, I think, because I think you already know this. You've already learned your own personal experience with COVID-19 is there are some people who get no disease from COVID-19, who get mild disease from COVID-19, and there are some people who get rather severe disease from COVID-19. That's on the disease end. That's on the recipient end. I think you don't have to have a vivid imagination to imagine that there also could be differences on the other end, that there are some people who are more infectious than others, that are spreading more virus, and it could be from a variety of factors, including the level that they talk at, the kind of a person they are, whether they get into your face. You know, the close talker, the people who get really up close and personal with you, those kinds of people would be obviously more potentially infectious than others. And so this concept has been around for a while. And I looked at an old paper from, it was basically after the SARS-1, not SARS-CoV-2, SARS-CoV-1, back in 2005. And they looked at variations out there in different diseases. And what I found is from their work is that the SARS virus, at least the first SARS virus, was much more, had a very low dispersion parameter, which means it's a high. Some people are highly infective. That's what I want. Sorry, infective. So some people are super spreaders, what we call super spreaders, and this is just a phenomenon of this particular virus. Other viruses like influenza, for instance, or plague or smallpox, are viruses that are very different. They're very, very homogeneous. You come in contact with a person, they are just about as infectious as the next person. And apparently there is some variation in the SARS viruses. So how do we use that information? You're home thinking, oh, cool, we found out something new. What is the importance of it? What is the significance of it? Well, since I can't tell you until after the fact if you are a super spreader or not, maybe you are, maybe you aren't. We have to always assume, I think, that we're all super spreaders. And so that if that is the case, if I get sick as a super spreader, if I get any kind of disease at all, I need to be careful. And even if I'm healthy, I could be one of those asymptomatic people. And what I need to do in that instance is to cover my face so that I'm not spreading the disease out there. So now I can talk a little bit louder, and I can even talk a little bit closer, and nobody has to worry about whether I'm going to be spreading the virus to them in a big way. Of course, you guys don't have to worry. you're watching me on your computer. You can't get the virus that way. Um, so I just want to point that out. Just remember, everybody, to be good to each other, and may you all persist like a lentivirus. And being good to each other includes wearing a mask in public spaces, not for you, for others. That is the thing. You may want to assume as much risk as you want, but you are protecting others by not by putting that mask on. And so you can, we don't know who's a super spreader. After all, it could be in this next picture, my wife could be a super spreader, and I could not be a super spreader, or vice versa. So we have to be very, very careful with each other. I will be back next Tuesday. Everybody have a great Memorial Day weekend, and a salute to the people who have served in the wars and served in the wars against COVID. There's a couple of warriors out there, and do something nice for somebody in this memorial. Somebody who has served. Let's do that. Let's all plan on doing that. And may you all persist like a lentivirus. Thank you.